Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. Any large major continental economy, it is powered by what we call four engines. Engine of domestic consumption, engine of private investment, engine of government spending, and finally engine of exports. At the moment, as we are seeing, all these four engines of India's economy are running at low speed, and resultantly, our economy is facing a slowdown and a stress. Traditionally, India has not really been an export-led economy. We have had a huge domestic market, we've had crony capitalism, we've had years of inward-looking policies, and resultantly, India's industry never really became an outward-looking, export-oriented industry. Thus, Indian exports have traditionally languished and they continue to languish. Now, while President Trump may be considered to be a maverick, a temperamental person, an unpredictable person, but one thing he has been doing good for the Indian economy is actually by triggering the US-China trade wars. The US market is huge for imports. Last year, Chinese exports constituted 21% of American imports, and that amounted to $540 billion, which is almost double of India's existing exports. That is this amount that China exports to the US. Trump has been clamping additional tariffs on all Chinese imports into the US, and he has now threatened to levy additional tariffs of another $300 billion worth of Chinese imports into the US. The more he levies tariffs on Chinese imports, the more it will be difficult for China to cater to the US market, and somebody else will need to step in. Last year, while Chinese exports constituted 21% of American imports, it has fallen down to 9%. They say a $300 billion opportunity for exports by other countries to US has already been created by these Trump-induced trade wars. Unfortunately, India has not really moved into that opportunity. The likes of Mexico have benefited, South Korea has benefited, EU has benefited, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, Philippines have benefited. India has not really. That's the reason why A.M. Nair, the L&D chairman, recently lamented that despite 2 years of US-China trade wars, India has not managed to capitalize on the opportunities that it is throwing up. And there is a reason for it. As I said, India has traditionally been an inefficient, domestic, inward-looking economy. And in case we want to now capture global markets, the likes that are being vacated by China, we will need to match the efficiency, cost, technology, and the way China delivers large-scale exports. India lacks it. And there are a lot of reasons for it. The reasons start with the cost of land and building in India remains prohibitive. India has perhaps the highest cost of land and building in the world, and unless this cost doesn't come down, how do new industries come up and become competitive? So the first problem is cost of land and building being very high in India. The second is power remains an expensive product in India. Compared to China, Indian power is almost 3 times more expensive. How do you then expect Indian producers to be producing cost-efficient goods that they can compete with other nations? And then comes interest. It's not just that India is facing a crisis in availability of funds by manufacturer exporters, but also interest costs are among the highest in the world. That makes our entire production cost to be not able to compete with others. And on top of all these difficulties come India's corporate tax. Corporate tax in India continues to be very high. Until that is not brought down, real profits of corporates will not improve, and they will not have the flexibility to be able to price their goods lower. That's yet another reason which holds us back. Another factor, while India has not been able to become globally competitive in exports across the board, has to do with skilled labor. India does not have enough skilled labor, and even if it is there, industries are not willing to scale up beyond a point. without labor reforms, where industries can hire and fire with ease depending on the trade conditions, industries are not willing to hire and increase the scale of their production and exports. That remains a problem. So not just that we don't have enough skilled labor, industries are unwilling to scale up into labor-oriented manufacturing for want of labor reforms. One point that India has always suffered from, and which has been repeatedly pointed out even by the World Bank in its surveys on ease of doing business, is the sanctity of contracts in India. With a slow-moving judiciary, with a judiciary which is very, very difficult to handle in terms of getting early orders, the sanctity of contracts in India actually gets mutilated. If a contract cannot be enforced immediately in a court of law, why should somebody deal with an Indian party? For the simple reason, trade disputes do take place, differences of opinion in transactions do take place, but the judiciary needs to deliver justice immediately, and that's not been happening. And that's one of the reasons why export-oriented units globally are unwilling to locate into India. Yet another reason that has been found out why exports languish are the government always gives GST income tax refunds in a very delayed manner. Refunds are held up for no reason, for frivolous reasons or for deliberate reasons by the government for months together. They end up eroding the working capital of the exporters, and exporters are forced to in turn borrow more expensive funds from banks if they are available. Because of funds getting blocked, volume of exports suffer, they are not able to deliver goods on time on international markets, and India's exports suffer. Yet another reason why India is not able to compete with the likes of China and occupy markets that they are vacating is our huge delay in logistics and logistics costs. If it takes about just 2 days in India, just 2 days in China for an export container to reach from a production site to the ports, in India, that time is about 6 times more. The average time for a container to reach from a factory to a port tends to be about 12 days. You cannot be getting into high volume exports unless this time is slashed considerably. And then, even after the goods reach the ports, there are huge delays in customs and port formalities. Containers are known to languish at ports, adding to the demurrage and damages and other costs to the exporter concerned. So logistics still remain a nightmare. And because we have all these features that are anti-exports in nature, we have a huge domestic market. Producers are happy manufacturing and selling in India. Who wants to get into logistics difficulties? Who wants to get into situations where funds are not available and exports languish? Who wants to face situations where contracts cannot be enforced? It's better to be in the domestic market. And that's one of the reasons why, despite President Trump creating space for India in American markets, we have not been able to occupy that space. And sadly, this is despite the fact that India is now a great partner of the US, despite the fact that there is a huge NRI constituency in America. Despite that, our exports are not a preferred one. In case we really want to get into exports, we will need major reforms. And at the moment, despite having such a strong majority in the parliament, sadly, the government has not come up with those reforms which can actually disrupt the present scene and facilitate exports by Indian manufacturers on a much larger scale. Till that doesn't happen, any market that may be vacated is not going to be occupied by us Indians. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
HW News Network today is a year and a half old. Thanks to your support, thanks to your love, we've grown. We require your support a little more. What we request you to do is to download our free app. Our app is in Hindi, English and Marathi. We promise to update you with the latest news, views, analysis, interview. We also have a live TV going in that. If you download our app, we will get advertisers. And if we get advertisers, we'll get revenue. We get revenue, we can serve you better. So once again, Please do support us. Please download our app. Namaskar.